everybody. We're back again. Episode 37. I think you just said to me.
Tell a friend.
A literal second ago. Episode 37. Fully endorsed, and we're talking about Loki, because this is slowly turning into the Guess What's New in the MCU podcast.
That's actually a pretty good title. Guess What's New in the MCU?
Oh my God, spinoff. Anyway. So yeah, we're going to talk about Loki, and then I promise I will not do an MCU thing next time. I haven't even made up my mind of whether or not we're going to cover What If yet, because it's like, it's an anthology, so it's like a whole other thing. But anyway, yeah, we're gonna talk about Loki. I don't even know how to open this conversation, Andres. Normally it's like, what was your exposure to this property? But I mean, it's Loki. You know
Yeah.
Loki.
Yeah.
You know Loki. I know Loki. Everybody knows Loki. Everybody loves Loki.
Yeah,
Or
that
loves to hate Loki.
that little trickster, that little scamp of a Norse god. I would say, so my first exposure to Loki was through the original Stan Lee comics from, I believe the Avengers started in the 60s, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I think me too. I think the first comic I ever read with Loki in it was the very first issue of Avengers.
Yeah. Did you ever get those like old? I'm not sure if they even print these anymore. These Marvel Essential volumes where they collect a whole bunch of their back catalog of Bronze Age comics and put them in volumes of like 24, 26 issues, but they print them in like these cheap pulp, black and white, like newspaper quality paper.
I have seen those. Yeah, I don't think when I read it, it wasn't in one of those collections because it was in color. I remember.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I read the first 24, 26 issues of the original Avengers comics, all in black and white through Marvel Essential Avengers Volume 1.
Yeah.
And
and that wasn't just my first exposure to Marvel's Loki. Mm-hmm. That was like my first exposure to Loki in general, because I didn't know much about Norse mythology. I didn't know much about Norse mythology back then. I was much more into the Greeks.
Yes. Yeah.
So it was. I was learning a lot through the Marvel comics, and then years later, I learned just how inaccurate all of that was. But
you like realize, wow, Loki was an even more fucked up individual.
So Back to the Future is a bunch of bullshit. So yeah, it's just. But anything that gets the name out there, gets the word out. I think the second thing I ever saw that had Loki in it or mentioned Loki was The Mask with Jim Carrey.
You're right. Yeah, you know what the thing is? I always forget that Loki plays a big part in The Mask. It wasn't until I was older that I realized, oh yeah, Loki does play a part in his mythology, and he ends up showing up in Son of the Mask with fucking Bob Hoskins as Odin.
We don't have to talk about Son of the Mask.
That's true. And I will say that to give a shout out to my buddy Will Kearney, aka Crooked Lore, I worked with him on his ongoing book series, God's Wrath, a Tournament of the Divine, which is a sort of which is like an action comedy book series, very much so inspired by like shonen anime like Dragon Ball, and it features a lot of mythological characters duking it out in tournaments, and one of the big supporting characters is Loki.
Now, the dear listener may be thinking to themselves, that sounds a lot like Record of Ragnarok.
This shit happened, I want to say, either before or during the creation of Record of Ragnarok, the manga. But hey, it's not like this is the first time like this concept has ever been done before, where characters from multiple mythologies cross over.
No, exactly. Everybody does that, and then putting those characters in a tournament. I'm sure that's probably been done before too. So it's
right.
Like,
but
there are no original ideas on trees.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, hey, look at Draco Azul. One big send up to Super Robot manga and anime. But does Record of Ragnarok have a gender bent Sun Wukong? I don't think so.
Sure.
At least
I don't
as
know.
far-
I
at least as
haven't.
far as I know.
I haven't read Record of Ragnarok or watched it. Nor have I read Will's book, so I have no idea.
I think
I really can't. I
Yeah.
really can't compare them.
I will say I think you might get a kick out of his rendition of Loki, which kind of touches upon the the idea of Loki having multiple genders within like both mythology and in as we soon learn in this which plays a factor into this Disney Plus series. So like with Will's version of Loki, he just has him as this like very androgynous, technically male character, but it's just like it's very, very much so like a, how would I say, yeah, just androgynous type of character who's sort of like a, I don't know what word would be the right terminology. I'm not even going to attempt to do so, but it's a very interesting take on the character that does fall in line with the trickster, the trickster god's infamous reputation of just fucking about with everybody just to get a rile out of them.
Right. But Marvel's Loki,
Yes.
MCU Loki, the show on Disney Plus,
Easily the most recognizable version there is.
Oh, absolutely, especially now. Yeah. I really think people take this for granted, but it's weird to think now that, these Marvel characters, that previously were like D-listers, comic book people knew about them, but the general public didn't, Iron Man, Captain America, etc. They're like as big now as Superman and Batman. Like everybody knows their names. And Loki is a part of that, and so this is definitely at this point the most like popular and well-known version of Loki, with number 2 maybe being the kid from the God of War games, the recent God of War games. So yeah, I don't know where to begin when talking about this show. It's so wild, isn't it?
I guess prior to going in, yeah,
it's the best season of Doctor Who we've had in years.
Yeah,
bullshit.
It does definitely feel like Doctor Who in certain cases, especially like the one standalone episode where they're on that planet that's about to explode, and there's the train. Yeah. All of it feels very much so like Doctor Who. Whenever you'd see the Doctor and his companions get stranded on a planet or whatever, and they have to escape. They know like everything's about to explode. They don't have access to the TARDIS for some contrived reason, and they got to escape. And they're like, "How do we do so?"
Yes. So, when I was pitching this show to our friend, the ever elusive Bill Worcester, aka Zazibar, trying to convince him to watch the damn thing, what I said to him is, imagine if the Time Lords captured the Master and forced him to help them catch another version of the Master.
Oh, yeah.
That's the basic plot as of like the first couple episodes. It's really Master Who as opposed to Doctor Who, and it's just a lot of fun.
Yes, exactly. Now, with this, going into the into the Loki series, this is not the Loki that we've been following this entire time. Ultimately,
because that Loki is the dead.
Yes, he got deaded.
As Starfire might say, he is the dead, and so this is the variant of Loki who escaped during the events of Avengers Endgame. Now, so this is 2012 Loki. This is like right after Avengers 1. How do you feel about that, Andres?
I thought it was very interesting to sort of go back on it's kind of weird. I feel I'm a little mixed on it, personally speaking, because as much as I enjoyed Loki in this series, it seemed to me like a bit of a cop-out because they know, like, they know that we like Loki, like the version of Loki that lasted up until Infinity War. And so they know that that's what audiences want. They want good guy Loki. They want, anti-hero Loki. The Loki, the little trickster with a heart of gold. That's the version that we have come to know and love throughout the years. And that is the version that we were hoping to see. And so they kind of took that opportunity to take 2012 Avengers 1 Loki and put him in a situation that conveniently helps him gain all of that character development in the span of like in a very short span of time. Now, I think the way they did it,
I wouldn't say that he gained the exact same character.
No, not the same, but they tried to get him into that good guy role that we enjoyed seeing Loki in.
It's different, but it does head in the same direction.
Right. And like I feel like that is perhaps one of my few complaints about this series is that it's because it's only 6 episodes, it feels like his getting him to that point, catching him up to speed and getting him to a point adjacent to Infinity War Loki was a little bit too convenient for my liking, but it's one of those things where like the series itself is greater than the sum of its parts. So like I could complain about that, but because I enjoyed seeing Tom Hiddleston's portrayal of this character, I am willing to forgive it for that.
Right. Also, you couldn't get this story with the main universe Loki because the entire point of this story is the TVA and variants and this whole idea of like time travel and alternate timelines and trying to and like these different versions of characters running around. And so you kind of need a Loki who is himself a variant.
Yeah.
In order to kickstart the events that unfold.
Right. So he is definitely someone like, I guess that is still something that makes this version of Loki distinct from the one from Infinity War, where this Loki, he is willing, well, I guess like original Loki was willing to play ball with Thor and the others, and he's willing to follow the rules for the sake of his own survival, whereas this version of Loki seemingly wishes to it's definitely out for his own self-interest. He's in it for his own self-interests, and so he's willing to bend the rules to whatever is most convenient to him. So there is a little bit of that devious nature that is still there, like carried over from the 2012 version of Loki. And I guess we should mention that this version is very much so involved in a giant conspiracy plot revolved around the sort of nature of of this universe, the Marvel MCU universe, where it kind of almost, not in a way, it doesn't rewrite the rules of time travel and how the universe works, but rather it kind of builds on top of it, showing that there's like another intricate layer of time traveling and sort of management of the timeline that was never established in Avengers Endgame before, but yet this one seemingly it's like there's this version of time travel, but then there's this other version of time travel which is like super time travel.
Right. It doesn't retcon, it just expands on what was there previously.
Right. So it's like previously they established that MCU's version of time travel revolves around multiverse rule. Essentially, if you've seen Dragon Ball Z, there you go. It's not one of those things where it's like it doesn't go by like Back to the Future rules where you go back in time, you change the past, you change the future. I mean, it's a very common way of time travel because of writing time travel because it's very simple and easy to understand. But the sort of like multiverse version of time travel where you go back in time, you change the past, but you don't change your future, you just create an alternate universe featuring a different future. And the Avengers, when they go back in time, they make sure to go back and fix everything so that everything is restored to one single timeline. Meanwhile, you have the TVA. I forgot, what did the TVA stand for?
The Time Variance Authority.
Thank you. So the TVA, they manage the whole timeline, and so anything that the Avengers could not handle, such as 2012 Loki escaping with the Cosmic Cube, they go in and make sure and wipe out that entire alternate universe from ever existing, and get rid of any characters that do not fit, such as the case of 2012 Loki, who is referred to as a variant of regular universe dead Loki. So, Yeah, as you mentioned, he is then later recruited to hunt down another variant, and apparently a much older variant who has been around for a while, and it's later revealed to be a female version of Loki, and eventually these two characters come to know each other, they bond over each other, and they decide to see who's really behind this entire TVA universal timeline authority.
Right. It's important to note,
Yes.
for comic book fans out there, that this version of Lady Loki is not really the Lady Loki that we know from the comics. She's actually a combination of that character and another Thor villain known as the Enchantress.
Right down to which, yeah, she definitely gets a lot of her, a few design cues from the Enchantress, especially with the blonde hair. And I guess, did she wear? No, she didn't wear horns. Rather, she had like a crown of sorts, I think.
Yeah, I mean, they kind of also did put a little bit of Enchantress into Hela back in Thor Ragnarok because she had the Executioner tagging around with her.
Right.
But this is more of the traditional sort of Enchantress. She's blonde. She goes by the name of Sylvie. Her main power revolves around like enchanting people and like.
Right. That's her. Like she was never really taught magic like Loki had been. Rather, yeah, she does like manipulate minds, which is kind of weird because I thought Loki also did that, but then I was like, oh wait, he used the cosmic cube to do. No, he used the staff from 2012 to do that.
Exactly. Yeah, so she just has a different skill set than him because she's sort of had to teach herself how to use her abilities rather than being taught magic by Frigg. Or Frey. Is she called Frigga or Freya in this continuity? I don't remember.
I forgot.
Anyway.
Yeah.
The Queen of Asgard. So yeah, it's a combination of those two characters.
I will say, like, early on with episode 1, it is very fun to see Tom Hiddleston acting as the dastardly 2012 Loki, and him, like, being so caught off guard by being put in this crazy situation where he is, like, stripped of his power, stripped of everything. He is such in a vulnerable position, and he can't fathom the idea of being in such a position that it's really hilarious to see.
I really love comedy that stems from like bureaucracy and just the absurdity of it. You know what I mean? And there's so much of that in that first episode.
yeah.
Like when he goes into the one room and the guy has that giant stack of papers. He's like, "Please sign to verify this is everything you've ever said." And then Loki is like, "This is ridiculous," and then it prints out another page.
This is ridiculous.
Puts it on top. Sign this too.
Right, and he has like what I like to call the Loki look, where he just has this very distinguished reaction to things. Like anything that's like absurd, he just has that quick reaction. He's like, "The fuck? Are you fucking serious?" And it's hilarious every time I see it.
Right. And then we're introduced to Miss Minutes, who made a big splash on the internet. Before Ratcatcher 2, people were simping over Miss Minutes.
Oh, no.
And,
oh, no. It's a sick world we live in with sick people.
She's very curvy, Andres.
She's literally one giant curve.
You betcha.
Ooh-wee.
Ooh-wee.
And here I thought simping over like the green M&M was too far.
She's all curves and hands, Andres. That's Miss Minutes.
Oh god, I hate the internet sometimes.
But anyway, we're introduced to Miss Minutes, and I really love that sequence. She reminds me a lot of Mr. DNA from Jurassic Park. She has that whole little animated segment where she like explains what the TVA does and what their role is. And everybody thought that WandaVision was going to be the show that would open up the multiverse, but Loki just went ahead and did the damn thing. Because this is the show, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't watched it yet, why the fuck are you here? This is the this is the show that blows open the multiverse. This is the one that gets that ball rolling.
Right.
So that we can all get Doc Ock in December.
Hello, Peter. So the whole role of the TVA is to prevent the creation of the multiverse. So as they establish in this series, that occasionally time starts to unravel, and for whatever reason, things that happen that are not supposed to happen, according to the person in charge, branch off into different multiverses. And so the TVA comes in and makes sure any of those variations, those variants are deleted, as well as that branched off multiverse that has been created. Right. So their job is, like I said, to eliminate any and all possibilities of a multiverse from existing so that only one universe exists. And so...
Because what we're told is that at one point there was a multiverse,
yes,
and it had led to chaos, and there was a big war, and like the entire multiverse was nearly destroyed. And so, for the good of everybody, the TVA has condensed, or the Timekeepers rather, have condensed the universe into one, what they call the sacred timeline, in the interest of averting another such catastrophe.
Right. And the head honchos in charge, they're initially described as these as Loki calls them, just lizard people or lizard men, and we see them for a bit. I don't know if they are a reference to anyone in particular in the Marvel comics.
The Timekeepers do exist in the Marvel comics, yes.
Okay.
And they're not just like weird Chuck E. Cheese animatronics. They are like actual. they are like actual characters in the comic.
Yeah. Should we go ahead and just spoil what happens to them?
I think I just did. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a whole Wizard of Oz thing, which you kind of can call that from like the first episode. I know I did. Uh-huh. It's this whole Wizard of Oz thing where they finally get to the Timekeepers, and then oops, the Timekeepers were fake. And then it's like the whole question of like, well, if they're not really running the show, then who is?
Right.
Oh my God! And then Loki.
Is it Mephisto, Dillion?
No. And then Loki.
Damn it!
And then Loki gets zapped, and it makes for one hell of a cliffhanger. So yeah, the Timekeepers in the show do not turn out to be real,
yes,
as it turns out. And instead, we're introduced to another character, which we'll get into at some point. But
yes,
yeah. So we talked a little bit about Loki. Yeah, everybody knows what we think about Tom Hiddleston as Loki. I mean, everybody.
He's amazing.
He's universally loved. But what did you think about? And I'm blanking on the actress's name, but the lady who plays Sylvie, the lady variation of Loki.
Yeah, I really liked her. I thought that she was a good, not only just a nice antagonist for Loki during the first couple of episodes, but I thought they built her role up very well. I thought that, kind of hiding her identity and saying like, who is this person who is knocking out our agents? This person is you. And so like this sort of mystery as to who this character is, I thought was nicely built up. She turned out to be a very nice, a very entertaining comedic foil for Loki afterwards. And in a bizarre way, she turns out to be a really interesting romantic interest for the character, as well as I love by the end that they've unfortunately come to blows once they realize that they come to like a what do you call it, a conflict of interest, where they're like what they end up doing by the end of the series that led to the creation of the multiverse. They realize that this action of theirs, if they decide to proceed with it, does have consequences, and each of them stand on opposite ends of the matter, which leads to the climax of this season. And that's right, yes. I said season because it turns out we're actually this is the first, I believe it's the first Marvel Disney Plus show to get a second season. First and only that has been confirmed for a second season. Now, I mean, What If might have a second season because it's an anthology, so why not? So I would be shocked if they didn't do a second season of that. But so far, this is the only one that's been confirmed to have a second season. WandaVision, the story of that is going to be continued in the next Doctor Strange movie, Falcon and the Winter Soldier. That story is going to be continued in Captain America 4. So it's like all these other shows are like feeding into movies, whereas Loki, as it turns out, is just setting up another season, which as well as Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Oh wait! I just realized something. So remember when like Scarlet Witch, she hears her fake children's screams. So
yes.
Now that we know that the multiverse exists, that's probably her children screaming from another multiverse, from another universe where they actually do exist.
It's very possible. It is very possible. I'd also like to think that maybe the moment that the multiverse explodes into existence is what actually causes Doctor Strange's spell to go crazy in No Way Home. We'll see. Anyway.
Yes.
Yes, Sylvie. She was really good. I totally called it, by the way, at the end of the first episode. At the end of the first episode, when they're like, the variant we're hunting is you, and then you see her kill those guys, but they still don't show her face. And I was like, it's gonna be Lady Loki. Like, there's no reason not to show the face, unless there's gonna be some big reveal there. And it just made sense that like it would be Lady Loki. I mean, it could have also been like a black Loki, but like Lady Loki had, which we did get later.
Yes, we did get a black Loki.
We did get a black Loki later, but Lady Loki has precedent in the comics, and therefore it just made a ton of sense that that's what that was going to be. What did you think about the whole romance angle? A lot of people on the internet were split on that. Some people loved it, some people were not about it. I've seen a lot of people call it incest, and I'm like, I don't think that fits the definition, but all right.
Just like to quote Rich Evans from Red Letter Media, just think of it as like super masturbation.
Exactly. It is the ultimate masturbation, frankly. It's weird. I support Loki's, his right to play with himself. Damn it!
I mean, I feel like the show does a good enough job at distinguishing these two characters as being separate individuals. But even still, like, personally speaking, if I were to meet another version of myself, male or female, I would kind of consider that individual to be something akin to like a brother or a sibling of some kind. So that's how I feel. I was like, like whenever you see like, I don't know, freaking Spider-Man, whenever he teams up with one of those people, you always feel like there's like this brotherly kinship between him and the various different versions of himself that he would team up with in various storylines, whether it's the animated series or the comics or the movie.
Sure.
At the very least, like Spider-Gwen and Miles Morales, when they hook up, those are clearly two distinct individuals, not two different versions of Peter Parker.
Right.
So, it is weird, but they strangely make it work, and for a character as fucked up as Loki, it works for him in particular, him specifically.
Yeah, I think it works with certain characters. You can do this with a Loki. If they did the same thing with Deadpool, it would work.
I think Deadpool has meant he has fooled around with Lady Deadpool, and they blatantly call it like pseudo incest. Captain Jack from Doctor Who, he would probably do that. It's like, certain characters you can get away with this sort of thing with, and it just kind of works. It just kind of makes sense, I thought. Although I probably would have the same reaction that Owen Wilson's character would have. And it's kind of funny that, like, of course, if Loki is going to fall in love with anyone, it's going to be himself.
Right. We actually haven't talked about that yet. Owen Wilson is in this show.
Wow.
Ka-chow. And
how? Which is the closest we get to that.
Right. He never actually says wow. And he also never rides a jet ski, which is not something I ever knew that I needed before now. But I swear, I really want season 2 to just open with like a cold open, just like an action scene. And it's just Owen Wilson on a jet ski, It's like filmed like it's fucking like Miami Vice or CSI Miami or something.
He's like, wow.
Wow.
Yeah, he plays an employee of the TVA, and it's initially established that the TVA are a bunch of seemingly human-looking individuals who were created supposedly created out of thin air to serve what was it called, the almighty timeline, the sacred timeline. Yeah, so they kind of like dress up as like SWAT, like I don't know, a cross between like SWAT members and a little bit what do you call it, stormtrooper-ish, and I'm talking like German stormtrooper, not Star Wars stormtrooper.
Ooh, yeah, they're like they're called Minutemen, and they're the TVA's like. Yeah, they're the boots on the ground, so to speak. It is very like SWAT team, very sort of stormtrooper. It's that sort of a deal. And then you have the analysts who are just sort of work in the office and like wear like suits. And, I think Mobius is technically an analyst. That's Owen Wilson's character, by the way.
Yeah, and he and everything. What I love about the TVA is that everything's got like, because they seem to take inspiration from like 70s cop dramas, which the first couple episodes feel like a 70s cop drama. With Loki and Owen Wilson's character like teaming up. It's sort of like, we need a criminal. We need to get a criminal. To catch a criminal, we got to use a criminal. We got to fight fire with fire. So it's kind of like one of those type of plot lines. Almost a bit like Silence of the Lambs a little bit in that case, when you bring in Hannibal Lecter's role in that film.
Sure, if Clarice had brought Hannibal into the field with her.
Yes. So with that said, because it takes a lot of inspiration, I wonder if because they're taking inspiration from like 70s cop dramas, I wonder if that's what led them to have the entirety of the TVA sort of modeled after a 1970s decor or like overall aesthetic, whether it's like Miss Minutes, which looks like a Hanna-Barbera cartoon. There is actually an animated sequence that looks like something out of like the Flintstones or the Jetsons that shows the process of eliminating all variants and multiverses from the sacred timeline. Everything has like a wood grain, like almost like Atari 2600 wood grain finish to everything.
It's like an old school like office aesthetic.
Everything from the clothing to the office supplies to the desks to the walls to the wallpaper to the clocks. Everything just feels like the 70s.
A lot of warm colors, a lot of like dark browns and oranges and reds, and fluorescent lighting.
And I do wonder, like, if this is sort of like something akin to like the Matrix, where the people in the beings in charge of the Matrix chose it to look like 1999 because they had a preference for that era of humanity. Meanwhile, they have like the 70s. I don't know. Maybe the guy in charge would be a fan of the 70s, I suppose.
Right. Well, if you have any doubt that a technologically advanced society with futuristic capabilities would also be using outdated analog office equipment, just look at Japan, and that should tell you that such a thing is entirely possible.
That is certainly true. They still rely on fax machines, for God's sakes.
They're very analog for some reason.
Yeah, heck, some of them still rely, a lot of the older generations still rely on flip phones.
They got to spend all that money on the giant robots. They can't afford to. When you got to rebuild after every Godzilla attack,
they got to protect their borders somehow.
You can't afford to buy a new printer.
So
that stupid stamp system, they put stamps on it.
Yep. I have one of those. Let's see. So we mentioned Owen Wilson, and Owen Wilson's character is very fun. He plays a perfect straight man to Loki's antics. You do really get emotionally invested in his character, especially when it gets to a point where he starts to unravel the strange ongoings behind the scenes with the TVA, to the point where he finds yes.
I was just gonna say, you get to see a lot of range from Owen Wilson in this show.
Absolutely.
Which you might not be used to if you're only used to seeing him in like, dumb comedies, Or
like, whether it's like Wedding Crashers or what was it called? Like, I think it was called The Internship, where it was him and Vince Vaughn trying to become like Google employees.
If you only know him as like, the tiny cowboy from Night at the Museum, then you might not realize that he actually can act. Like,
that is true,
behind that goofy demeanor and whatever the hell happened to his nose. He is a good actor, damn it, and he really shows it in the show. He gets to really show his chops here.
Yes, absolutely. And so I would say like he's definitely one of the biggest highlights from this series. The other ones being one particular Loki variant. So as we later learn, at first I like the subversion where they establish that anyone who is dealt with is essentially, it appears that they are essentially erased from existence, but as it turns out, they are actually sent to an alternate, like to a point in time at the very, very end of the timeline where everything is destroyed. So it's kind of basically like a one big dumping ground for all variants or anything that does not make sense in the sacred timeline to be sent over there to be eaten up and erased for good this time by a big, giant, scary cloud monster, which I don't know. I'm assuming it's from the comics, and I'm assuming there's already a bunch of Marvel explain videos.
Yes. Goliath, the cloud monster, is in fact from the comics.
Okay, not surprised. So
yes, it's basically a giant cosmic garbage disposal.
Yes.
Send everything to when they prune it,
which leads to a shit ton of Easter eggs that were really amusing to see upon recognition.
Yes, the Thanos copter is canon now.
Fuck yeah!
The Frog Thor canon.
Speaking of Frog Thor, wait, didn't we also see like we saw the helmet of Yellow Jacket from Ant-Man?
We did indeed.
But it was a giant. It was a giant helmet. So this was like a variant of Yellow Jacket who somehow got the powers to grow giant. Which I am aware that Ant-Man did become. I think he did become Yellow Jacket at one point.
Yeah, so originally in the comics, Yellow Jacket is Hank Pym.
Yeah, and it was just turned into like a generic MCU baddie for the movie.
We kind of got a version of Hank Pym Yellow Jacket in What If, but I won't spoil that.
Ooh, okay.
Indeed. But, so yeah, it's there's a lot of Easter eggs there. Also a lot of references to a certain Marvel villain who's coming up. A certain big purple man. Well, actually...
Another big purple man!
Actually, not purple.
Blue?
His outfit is... yes. He's the Blue Man Group. No, it's... He's actually not even blue.
It's Dr. Manhattan.
He's actually not even blue because it's like a helmet. It's like a mask and a helmet.
True.
So
yeah.
He's not even actually blue. But
Dabba-dee-dabba-die.
Yes. Kang the Conqueror, everybody.
Woo!
I had hoped that it was going to be Kang, but I didn't want to say because after what happened with Mephisto,
yeah,
I was like, it looks like Kang. All signs point to Kang, but I'm just being cautious here and saying maybe it's not. But it turned out, yeah, it is. It's Kang. It's all Kang.
Kang all along. He's been behind this entire timeline from the very get-go.
And if you're paying attention, it should be pretty obvious. I mean, the head judge at the TVA, Ravonna Renslayer, in the comics, she is connected to Kang. She's like his love interest.
Mm-hmm.
Goliath, the cloud monster that we mentioned before, also tied to Kang in the comics. And a lot of the Easter eggs that we see in the End of Time are not the Doctor Who two-parter, The End of Time, but the
I was like, wait a minute.
The place at the end of the timeline where they send the shit to get destroyed. That a lot of the Easter eggs in there are references to Kang stuff. There's a lot of like ancient Egyptian shit there because when Kang first appeared in the comics, he had traveled back in time to ancient Egypt and was ruling under the name Rama-Tut, and he fought Fantastic Four. There's a building that says Quang, I think it's pronounced Quang, Qeng on it, and that is a company in the comics that turned out to be run by another version of Kang. So there are a lot of little Easter eggs for
Neat.
Kang, sprinkled all throughout. If you know where to look, you can see them. And
Nice.
then he showed up. Although technically it isn't Kang, it is He Who Remains, which is a variant of Nathaniel Richards, who is really more similar to a Mortis than Kang. I'm so sorry to anybody who doesn't know about Kang from the comics, because this must be the most confusing sentence you've ever heard. Because Kang is complicated.
Yes. So, like, my exposure to Kang has been primarily through that original set of comics of Avengers that I read through all those years ago, and through Avengers: Earth's Mightiest Heroes, where he does appear as a reoccurring villain. So, right. My understanding to what Kang was, I guess to boil him down to explain him as one sentence. Oh, wait, I also read, I think it was called Avengers: The Heroic Age, where Kang started a war with Ultron that ultimately got bigger and bigger and bigger until it erased all of time, and thus cracks in the timeline and multiverse was happening. So Kang had to get the help of the Avengers to come help him finally defeat Ultron in the future. But aside from
about Kang, Kang, whose real name is Nathaniel Richards, who is
dang Nathaniel.
Nathaniel, he is a
no Nathaniel. Oh no, Nathaniel, no. There must be more to life. No, I'll stop.
Anyway, so Nathaniel Richards, who is a future descendant of Reed Richards and who also might be related to Doctor Doom, but it's vague. He is a scientist in the future, the 31st century to be exact, and he discovers time travel, and he becomes a time-traveling supervillain because he wants to conquer. And there's nowhere left to conquer in the 31st century, but time gives him infinite times and places to conquer, and so he becomes Kang the Conqueror. And because he's a time traveler, there are a ton of different versions of him running around in the comics, because time travel, as we've established, creates alternate realities and alternate versions, variants, if you will. And so there are a bunch of different versions of Kang the Conqueror. Many of them go by the name Kang. There's also the one I mentioned before, Rama Tut, the one who went back to ancient Egypt and ruled for a while before he was deposed by the Fantastic Four. He also had some dealings with the Apocalypse back then. There's also Immortus, who's like an older version of Kang, who's kind of over the whole trying to conquer the universe thing and is more sort of doing what He Who Remains does in this show, kind of just like trying to watch over everything. There's another version of Kang called the Scarlet Centurion, and the other most notable version is Iron Lad, a younger version of Kang who met his older self, didn't like the idea of becoming a supervillain, and instead went back in time and became a superhero, and then started the Young Avengers.
Cool.
And so that's just a brief history of Kang. It's way more complicated than that.
Right. But basically he's a time-traveling baddie.
At one point he had a weird son who raped Carol Danvers. It's a lot.
Wait, this is Avengers 200?
Yes.
Oh, no!
The entity that raped Carol Danvers so that it could be born into a physical body is actually technically the son of Kang the Conqueror. It's complicated and comic-y. But the point is, that's Kang. He's been around since the 60s, and there's a lot of history there. Yes. And ever since Avengers Infinity War, or Endgame rather, I have been predicting that, the next big bad in the MCU should be Kang, because they've just introduced time travel, and he's like one of the biggest Avengers villains out there, with alongside characters that we've already seen, like Ultron and Loki, Thanos. So it just made a lot of logical sense to do Kang next, and they're doing it. I mean, this was already confirmed anyway, because they had cast. I'm blanking on his name now. The guy who's in that show Lovecraft Country. Anyway, they had already cast him in the role, and they had announced that Kang would be appearing in the next Ant-Man movie.
Oh, wow. So soon.
Yes. But now we've been introduced to this other version of the character, Jonathan Majors. That's the actor's name. We were introduced to this other version of the character, He Who Remains, who again is kind of similar to Immortus. I'm going to stop now because this is a lot. What do you have to say? What do you have to say about Kang on Trace?
I got to say he's a very effective antagonist. I like that he's built up. Once again, this show does a really good job of subverting expectations, showing that nothing is as it seems. whether it is the lizard people turning out to be Kang, the TVA agents actually turning out to be variants themselves who were kidnapped, wiped of their memories, and served as, you know, drones of the servants of the TVA. The fact that, you know, seemingly erased people are actually sent to a cosmic dumpster of a location. There's so many twists and unique, interesting twists and turns here that I find to be very fascinating, and the way they depict not Kang is also very interesting, because you expect him to be this sort of like big, scary Wizard of Oz type of thing. Again, like Wizard of Oz, you'd think that he'd be this big, physically imposing individual akin to like the three what were they called, the trio that turned out to be fake?
The Timekeepers.
The Timekeepers, yeah. You would expect him to be like all bit wise and elderly and serious looking as the Timekeepers, but it turns out he's just a really casual guy. He's like, hey, what's up? Yeah, I'm he who remains. I dictate the how the universe goes and how everything that goes on in it. Yeah, and you know, hey, you can kill me now. And you can.
What of it?
Yeah, what of it? Yeah, what you gonna do about it? And I like the ultimatum he places on them. He's like, you know what? I've been doing this job for far too long. I'm old. I'm tired, and I'm at the point now where I can't predict shit. So, you can either kill me now, create the multiverse, and have to deal with a bunch of bad versions of me, or just let me do my job, and you're free to go.
Oh no, actually, he offered them to take over. He was like, "You guys."
Yes. Oh, right. That's true. But he did say, like, you know, hey, if you kill me, there's gonna be a lot of you cause the multiverse, and that's the thing. I love his reasoning for why he created the sacred timeline in the first place, was because originally there was always a multiverse, and by the time he discovered time travel and alternate dimension travel, alternate universe travel, so did every other version of himself, and eventually he found out there were like evil versions of himself. So just that caused that war that the Timekeepers originally lied about, which didn't really turn out to be a lie. There was a big multi-universe war. It was just started by one individual and all his variants.
Right.
And so eventually he got the only way to stop all this madness from continuing and growing was to condense everything into one sacred timeline, so that the universe would never have to deal with a quote unquote evil version of himself, the one that we would know as Kang the Conqueror.
The brilliant thing about that whole last episode is, like, it's just one big, like, almost job interview in a way. It's one big episode of Kang just explaining to the audience, okay, this is why I'm a good follow-up threat to Thanos.
Yes.
This is why the stakes are actually way higher than they've ever been before.
Right. This isn't just a universal scale anymore. This is a multiversal scale.
Right. I'm waiting for them to rebrand and start calling it the MCM, because it's not just. It's not just a Marvel Cinematic Universe anymore. It's a Marvel Cinematic Multiverse. We got Tobey Maguire running around. You know, it's like...
You know what this means? This is the perfect excuse to make any movie they want and no longer have to worry about it being in continuity. Because if something doesn't fit right, they'll always say, it's a variant.
No, fuck it. I guess Venom is canon now, and in whatever alternate reality that is, Venom happened.
Venom happened. Tobey Maguire happened. Andrew Garfield happened. Spider-Man's happened.
The old Fantastic Four movies, they happened, but not Fan-4-Stick. It never happened.
No, nobody wants Fan-4-Stick to have happened.
Ghost Rider happened, but not the sequel. And both Daredevils, they exist.
Now, did the what's his name, David Hasselhoff, Nick Fury happened?
Of course it happened.
Thank God. Lou Ferrigno happened.
Ang Lee Hulk happened. Fuck it.
Yeah. Right. So it's a very interesting one. ending. Although I will say I wasn't completely satisfied with the ending, only because it just leaves you on a huge cliffhanger that doesn't really that doesn't really wrap up all of its plots. But I suppose it's akin to, like, because we know that they're going to have a season 2, so I guess it's akin to how I felt with, I don't know, I feel like with something like Godzilla Singular Point, there were a lot of unanswered questions, but it does leave the door open for a potential season 2. Whereas with this one, I feel like the ending for something like, I know you haven't seen Singular Point, but I feel like the ending for Godzilla Singular Point felt more conclusive compared to this ending. Whereas this one, it felt like it doesn't feel like really kind of feel like a proper conclusion. It just feels like I don't know. I guess it's one of those like cliffhanger. Yeah, it is most definitely a cliffhanger ending. Singular Point did not end on a cliffhanger ending, but again, does leave the door open for more stories. With this one, it's like, oh, we're just getting started now. Things just got a whole lot more complicated. You know what? In a way, it kind of also feels a bit similar to like each ending for each season of The Umbrella Chronicles. Oh, which, by the way, that's another series I should probably. Have you seen The Umbrella Chronicles, Dylan?
No.
Okay, it does kind of end that way as well, but with each season of Umbrella Chronicles, they at least wrapped up the overall story that had developed across each season. With this one, however, I don't know. Does it feel like they've wrapped up anything by the end of this of this season?
I would say that they did. I mean, they wrapped up the whole mystery about what was going on with TVA.
True.
And they destroyed the status quo and established a new status quo moving forward.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really what was accomplished, and then everything else is set up for season 2. He Who Remains is dead, but now there are all these other versions of Kang running around. Loki and Sylvie have been separated. Loki is now with a version of Mobius and B-52, is that her name? Who don't know him.
Right.
Because they're not the ones that he knew before. They are variants. I love that last shot. It's very Planet of the Apes, where he looks out that window where that statue of the Timekeeper had been in all the other episodes, and there's just a giant statue of Kang wearing his classic comic book suit without the helmet, but whatever.
Right. That'll come later, I bet.
It was just great. that last shot.
Yeah, that is true. Yeah, but I will say, like, as a little mixed as I am with the ending, I am certainly, it does leave me very, very excited for what's to come.
Yeah, and there's still some unanswered questions. Prior to being killed, He Who Remains sent a message to Ravonna. And then she stepped through a doorway and went off somewhere. We don't know where.
Yeah.
So where did he send her? Where did she go? What's happening with that?
Where did she come from? Cotton Eye Joe.
Exactly.
Yeah. Oh, I forgot to mention. So that whole portion, one of my favorite sequences in the whole season was when they ended up going to the that big place where all the variants are sent to, and we meet a plethora of Loki variants. Because of course, if there's going to be anyone who's mischievous enough to make a bunch of variants, it would be Loki.
Exactly. And oh my God, Hugh Grant, is that his name? Hugh Grant?
I believe so, yeah.
No, I think Hugh Grant is somebody else. Okay. I always do this. What is his fucking name? Richard Grant. Richard E. Grant. Fuck. Okay, yeah. Richard E. Grant. Richard E. Grant as old Loki.
Yes.
Is best Loki.
Yes.
They call him Classic Loki because he's wearing the classic Loki outfit from the comics.
Yes.
Which looks just as stupid as you might imagine in live action.
But it's amazing. It continues the trend of the hilarious trend of these Disney shows going for comic accurate costumes. Whether it's first it was Scarlet Witch, then I was going to say Captain Falcon, and now Classic Loki.
Yes. and it's so stupid, but it just looks great. It just works, especially the way he uses the cape.
Yeah.
Richard E. Grant is always like flailing the cape around when he emotes, and it's really great. He does a lot of great stuff with that costume. So we meet him. We meet Kid Loki, which is another big variant from the comics that's very well known. Kid Loki. We meet
Black Loki, who really doesn't do much, sadly.
the Black Loki. I don't really know. I don't really get what his deal was supposed to be. He had a hammer, but it wasn't Mjolnir, so I don't know what the deal was.
Right. President
Alligator Loki.
No. We gotta save him last. We got President Loki, who I don't know. As someone who didn't see the series until now, they seem to have like kind of hyped him up with all the promotional material. Like whenever there's like a poster of Loki or like a thumbnail of Loki, you always see like President Loki right there. He's the only one who's just played by Tom Hiddleston again. And
we all assumed because it was Tom Hiddleston, I suppose, that was our Loki, who for some reason was running for president. But that's not the case. It's a variant of Loki who I guess ran for president prior to being pruned, maybe.
Now, do you think that was a Trump reference? Or was this something that happened in the comics?
It could have been a Trump reference. I don't really know.
Huh. But he doesn't last too long. He's like barely in this series.
Yeah, he has a great moment though when Loki bites his hand off.
Yes, and then like it's just like he betrays Black Loki betrays the other Lokis, and then like the men betray him. Everyone's betraying each other, save for our Loki, classic Loki, Kid Loki, and Alligator Loki. These are the ones who are smart enough to say, you know what? We're done with this betrayal bullshit. And I like that you have this like band of Lokis who are constantly on the run from the crazy batshit crazy President Loki.
Right. I love their reaction when our Loki asks them, "Have you ever met a female version of us?" And they all go like, "Ugh." Ugh. Classic Loki goes, "Sounds terrifying."
Yeah. But yeah, the best addition of all definitely was Alligator Loki, and I'm so glad they kept him around as long as as much as they did. And I just love Tom Hiddleston's our Loki's reaction, where it's like, "You mean to tell me that shit's a Loki too?" Like, yes, he is just as equally a Loki. And then
I like when he's introducing them to Sylvie.
Yes.
He's like, "This is us as a child, and us older, and us as an alligator."
Yeah, and earlier you mentioned that there is a Frog Thor, and that is presumably from the same variant universe where Alligator Loki came from.
I mean, it would have to be, right?
Right.
Unless it's just a universe where everyone's an alligator.
Now, do you suppose is this supposed to be like the same universe where Spider-Ham comes from?
No, because I'm pretty sure those are different universes in the comics.
Okay.
Spider-Ham comes from this like crazy like Looney Tunes universe, whereas the Frog Thor just comes from a universe where all of your well-beloved characters are animals.
Right. I feel like DC did something similar as well, but I can't remember. I don't know. I keep thinking that there was something akin to like they were all barnyard animals or something.
Probably.
Like
they've been publishing these superhero stories since the 30s. I mean, any dumb shit you can think of has probably been done.
Right. I think I also remember that at one point DC they did a series of short films, and one of them featured like Bat Mongoose, and I don't know who he was fighting. I think the Joker was like a fish or a frog or some kind.
Huh.
But it was called DC Nation's Farm League. That's what it was. But anyways, yeah, turning classic comic book characters into animals. That's definitely been done a lot before. And it was really, really fun for them to make such a deep, crazy, random pull like that, as crazy and random as like Spider-Ham and Into the Spider-Verse. And I love
all the discussions that everybody has about like, do you think he's really a Loki, or does he just like an alligator that's wearing a hat, you know?
Yeah, it's like you gotta wonder, because you know, you gotta wonder how some of these variants came into existence, because like with something like Sylvie, it was just like, for all we know, it was just, oh, this is Loki who was born a girl, and because she was born a girl, she has to die. But like, or Kid Loki, he explains that he killed his brother Thor at a very young age, and that's what caused his variant universe from branching off. And
my headcanon is that I like to think that when he killed Thor, it was that story that Thor told in Thor Ragnarok about how when they were 8, he transformed himself into a snake because he knew that Thor loved snakes. And then when Thor picked up the snake, he turned back into himself and said, "Bah, it's me," and then he stabbed him.
And what was it? Classic Loki, he explains that when he supposedly died at Thanos' hands, that was actually just like a really strong illusion, and that he actually escaped, and for many, 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 many years he lived in peace on a planet, and decided, you know what, I've had enough of just living in peace and solitude. I want to leave, and that's when he allowed himself to get caught. But for Alligator Loki, yeah, it's like, how does that happen?
Right. Well, in the infinite multiverse, I like to think of it as like a spectrum, right? Mm-hmm. And the universes that are the closest to ours, obviously, are the ones where Loki looks the same, but he's a little different, you know?
Like President Loki.
Like President Loki, or that soccer player Loki that we saw in that like little slideshow that Mobius was showing in that one episode.
Oh.
And then I like to think that the farther away you get, like the further you get to like the outer edges of the spectrum, it just starts getting crazy.
Turns out Odin fucked an alligator.
Yep.
It's like he just like Odin pulls a Zeus and just starts doing a whole lot of weird shit.
There's this ongoing joke in the Harley Quinn animated series where Harley Quinn is always saying that Batman fucks bats. Like, it's kind of like that.
I see. Let's see. There was that one thing that people kind of that caused a lot of buzz online. That was the reveal of Loki's bisexuality or pansexuality, whatever. And people were like really overjoyed for that, and people were surprised or upset about that. And me, I was like, okay, because you and I we discussed this before. Where Loki in the comics, or not Loki in the comics, Loki in the in mythology is quite a sexual deviant. He's pretty much like, he has fucked anything and everything, essentially.
He's fucked everything. He's been fucked by everything. He's given birth several times to various monsters. That's the thing. Is like the Disney Plus goes, Loki's bi. And, you know, people who only know him from the movies were shocked. Mm-hmm. And people who read the comics were like, yeah, we know. And people who knew Norse mythology were like, yeah, it's cute.
Right. Like he gave birth, I believe, to Sleipnir, the 8-legged horse that Odin would later use to ride into battle.
Yes, he gave birth to that. He also gave birth to Jormungandr, the world serpent, as well as Finn. I always forget, is it Fenrir or Fenris, the giant wolf that?
I think it's Fenrir.
That kills Odin.
There's Fenrir because the dragon is Fafnir.
Right, that kills Odin during Ragnarok. So. Yeah, those are his 3 monster babies. And if I'm not mistaken, in the mythology, Hela is also his daughter.
Oh, okay.
So yeah.
Mythology is weird.
Mythology is weird.
Yeah, so it's like for him to become to have been revealed as bi, or, you know, again, pan, who knows what, I don't care. It's like, yeah, it's like, all right, about time they did that. Yeah. Although it's interesting that when people are discussing, I guess, LGBT representation in media, it's very interesting that, you know, people are celebrating that Loki is bi, but ends up in a potential heterosexual relationship with Sylvie. So it's like, that's Hollywood for ya.
Yeah, well, that's a whole other conversation that I'm not gonna get into right now.
Oh yeah, but, definitely, yeah. We're definitely not the right people for that, and this is definitely not the right place for that, I feel.
That's just not the. It's not that I don't want to. It's not that I feel uncomfortable talking about it. It's just that it's a lot, and
Absolutely, yeah. I definitely know what you mean, man.
It would take a while to really delve into that, but yeah, man, it's weird. We had Loki, and then like a month later, I think there was the whole Tim Drake thing. So
yes, yeah, that's a interesting double whammy right there.
I think the internet had a bigger reaction to the Tim Drake thing because I feel like more people were just apt to go like, yeah, that makes sense with Loki. Whereas with Tim Drake, there was a whole lot of more of like, that was never a thing versus like, that was always a thing. And the two sides just trying to kill each other.
I think that's just the thing. It's like with, again, Loki is is like a very old character from mythology. So a lot of people are well aware of that who are fans of mythology. And then when it comes to Tim Drake, I think that just goes to show how majority of people who know comic book characters don't read comic books. So it's only
like how in Marvel Comics Hercules is also bi, and it's like, yeah, of course he fucking is.
Yeah,
he's from ancient Greece.
Which if you haven't watched our episode talking about that in the Odyssey, about our episode covering the Odyssey, go do so.
Ancient Greece is super gay. Yo.
Yeah. But I guess when it comes to like Tim Drake, it's like people mainly know him from television and video games. He wasn't in any movies. I guess you can count the animated movies. But yeah, movies, TV, games, what have you.
If you haven't actually read the comics, then most people are probably familiar with him from TNBA,
yes.
Which is not really an accurate representation of Tim Drake because they kind of mixed him with Jason Todd in that show.
Yeah. But hey, that's arguably the most recognizable version of Tim Drake there is. And yeah, again, like I said, nobody reads comics. I mean, what I mean by that is that the majority of people who enjoy entertainment don't read comics. Right.
There is a very large comic book reading community, and we are in no way insinuating that they do not, in fact, exist.
I'm just saying that there's another community that significantly dwarfs them.
Views of Andres Perez do not necessarily reflect the views of...
God damn it. Is this going to be the thing that gets me canceled? by saying people don't read comics?
All the weird shit we've said on the internet, yeah, this is going to be the one. You know that I've been reading comics for 85 years, young man.
I'll be like, good for you. Great. Go for it.
I don't know why an elderly woman is shouting at us on the internet in this example, but that's just the voice that I decided to do. So here we are.
And that's, ladies and gentlemen, that's exactly the way it's been.
Is there anything else we need to talk about with regards to Loki?
Let's see. We talked a little bit about the ending. Well, I guess we didn't mention it, but Sylvie ends up killing not Kang and kickstarts the multiverse. She escapes, yes. And Loki is forced to pick up the pieces of this mess.
This is a minor note, but it was really nice to see Lady Sif again, because for a long time...
Oh, yeah!
For a long time, the MCU just kind of forgot that she existed. And the really cool thing about it was they were showing a scene from Norse mythology where Loki had cut Lady Sif's hair, and she wasn't happy about it. Now,
right.
In the original myth, and I believe it was this way in the comics also, she starts out with like blonde hair, and then after he cuts it, it grows back dark, and that's why she's got the dark hair. But in this version, it's just she always had the dark hair, and he just like cut it while she was sleeping, which is fine because that would be a lot of extra information to go into.
Right.
Yeah.
It is funny to see him be repeatedly just like just kicked in the nuts over and over again.
Yeah.
This does remind me of something. So this is a little complaint I've heard from elsewhere, and that is, does it seem like they nerfed Loki in terms of his powers and abilities? Because he's established in, especially because since this is 2012 Loki, the Avengers had a really hard time trying, even like laying a finger on him, and yet he gets his ass beat by everyone. Even like when Sylvie mind controls humans, these normal humans are able to kick Loki's ass. And so I didn't notice this at first because, again, I hadn't watched the Avengers in a long time. But upon seeing people make the comparisons between 2012 Avengers 1 Loki and Disney Plus Loki, it does feel like they depowered him a lot. Like, take for instance the scene where he's like thrown out of the train. He could easily teleport himself back on the train, or he can use his god strength to overwhelm those people who are fighting him.
I don't know if Loki can teleport, though.
Oh no, he's teleported in Avengers 2012.
When?
Remember, actually, let's see, was it teleport or was it like illusions? I'm thinking now.
See, that's the thing. I don't think he's actually teleported. I think he just casts illusions of himself, and then the real him steps out. Because if you're talking about the scene where he steps up behind Phil Coulson and stabs him in the back, that's definitely like an illusion cast.
Or like, what about the scene where like Thor dives after him, but ends up in that container unit that he later drops?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's also just another example of him using his illusion powers. I don't think he's ever actually teleported, and they don't list that among his powers when Mobius is sort of giving them the rundown in episode 2, I believe it is.
Okay, but at the very least, I figure he must have he would have the physical capability of defending himself from regular humans that are mind controlled by Sylvie.
Right. I mean, you could say that maybe people who are being mind controlled by Sylvie become stronger.
Yeah, you could say that. Yeah, but
there are a million ways that you could explain. It's weird. In some instances, I feel like, yes, he comes across as weaker, but then there are other instances where, like, we see him do things that we never even knew he could do. He does, like, a lot of telekinesis in this show that I don't think that was ever established before. The most impressive instance is in episode 3, when they're trying to get to that ship, and there's, like, a whole ass building falling over, and Loki just, like... he just like stops it in midair and then makes it go back up.
Oh, right. I do remember that part as well. Yeah, so I don't know. I found it to be a little interesting because it seems to be a thing. Like I've seen some people starting to make memes out of this, where anytime you have a bad guy become a good guy, they instantly become weaker. And I think that's mainly just to draw
the meme of like the character when you fight them as the final boss versus when you unlock them, which is so true.
Yes. And I think that's because, obviously you want your bad guy to be powerful because you want to be able to raise the stakes. But if that same bad guy had all that power, obviously there'd be no stakes. So of course you would have to nerf them.
It's also important to remember that during 2012, his powers and his evil were being enhanced by the scepter. So that's Loki on an Infinity Stone. So that's another thing to consider.
Possibly, yeah. Oh, by the way, I did like that we get an appearance from the Infinity Stones again, which are rendered completely useless in the offices of the TVA. So it's really hilarious to see these people, these office workers, just like juggle them around, handle them around like toys or little knickknacks.
Yeah, and it makes sense that there are so many of them there because obviously people messing around with the Infinity Stones is going to cause a lot of variant timelines. And the ones you see the most are like the Reality Stone and like the Time Stone, and that makes a lot of sense, because that definitely would happen, especially given that whole speech in game about how if you remove one of the stones from the timeline, you're going to cause a branch, like that whole thing.
Right.
Mark Ruffalo and the lady.
Yes,
Tilda Swinton.
The ancient one. The ancient, wasn't she the ancient one?
Yes, the ancient one.
Yes. Okay. But yeah, outside of that, I think that's about it for us. I think we covered just about everything.
I'm thinking. I'm giving it one last thought just to make sure. But, but I think
I guess we didn't mention that one. You mentioned her a little bit. The main like TVA employee who served as like a pseudo antagonist, a secondary antagonist for Owen Wilson to deal with, and later Sylvie.
Yeah. Ravonna. I really liked her. I thought she did a good job.
Yeah. Oh, one thing I also forgot to mention is that with Miss Minutes, I know she was animated and rendered in CGI. I wish they actually pulled a Roger Rabbit and had her be traditionally animated, given that what she's clearly meant to look and be inspired by 2D animated characters.
Yeah, I mean, they did sort of make her look 2D, but then again, when she's moving around in the physical world,
You can tell it's 3D.
Yeah, it's a mix. I think it's a 3D model with some 2D stuff put over it.
Right.
Not unlike what they do now in What If. But
yeah, that's about it for me.
Yeah. All right, well, that was Loki. I think we both fully endorse it.
Absolutely.
I would go as far as to say that of the Disney Plus shows so far, I think it's my favorite.
Let's see. You know what? It's might be a tie between Falcon and Winter Soldier and Loki, but given that this scratches that Doctor Who itch of mine that I didn't realize I missed until now, I think I'm gonna have to go with that. Yeah, I'll go with Loki for now. It might change in the future, but we'll see.
Really? So you have WandaVision at the bottom? Interesting.
Yeah.
See, I like all three.
Like WandaVision's great, but the thing is, it's like I love the Captain America movies, and I love it. Like the Falcon and Winter Soldier carried that, political thriller, action, espionage stuff from those movies perfectly in that series. And meanwhile, with Loki again, the whole the
John Walker stuff also, which was amazing.
Yes, yeah. I just feel like maybe there's just like, I don't know, all of them are great. I've thoroughly enjoyed all three Disney Plus shows, but I feel like these last two were more to my taste in entertainment, I feel.
Well, I mean, it's no secret, Disney is Marvel in particular. They're just fucking crushing it this year, man.
Yeah. Who knew?
Who knew? there were a lot of motherfuckers saying, after Endgame, it's all gonna go downhill, man. I don't know, man. So far, so good.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was Loki. So what are we gonna talk about next time, Andres? Episode 38.
Yes, 38. So because I'm in such a Marvel mood thanks to Loki, I would like to talk about the first season of the 2010 animated series Avengers: Earth's Mightiest Heroes. This was a series that came out right at the start of the Disney buyout of Marvel, but this was the last thing that Marvel produced while not under the control of Disney. But you can tell this was interesting. Is this was the series that introduced a lot of people to the Avengers 2 years prior to the MCU Avengers. And as we watch this series, this is one of those beautiful gems that encapsulates everything that's great about the classic comic book versions of the Avengers, while setting the stage and introducing characters that would soon later appear in the MCU. So it's that nice little gap. This was nowadays, whenever Disney makes a new animated series, it has to tie into the movies, or it has to look like the movies, it has to feel like the movies, whether it's the video games or the animated TV shows. But this was one of those things that was much like X-Men the animated series, Spider-Man the animated series. This was a thing where it's we are going full-on comic book here. And honestly, I miss those days.
All right, well, you heard it here first. Andres recommended the Marvel thing this time. It's not my fault, damn it. Avengers: Earth's Mightiest Heroes. Tune in next time for that if you want to. Until then, I've been Super DM64.
And I am Andres Perez, aka Kaj Noir. And until next time, everybody, take care.